The GOAT, aka Michael Jordan, depending on who you ask,
LeBron James
was someone who I believe to be seen universally as one of the greatest defenders of all time. Well, former NBA champion Rasheed Wallace has a very different take on this. Let's roll the clip.
Mike wasn't all that good of a defender.
10 all defensive teams, that Michael Jordan.
All that's NBA shit. Yeah, we like Mike, we gonna put him out there. I'm talking about being out there. I seen this motherfucker get his ass bust where he couldn't stop him up against J.R. Ryder. Probably against Clyde Drexler shit. Don't forget the early Joe Dumars. And I'm not saying that he didn't play defense. I'm just saying that his defense wasn't as high as most other cats at that time. I couldn't put him on like 10 or 11 consecutive first team all defensive joints.
Well, I mean, he does have some leverage in saying that he was actually there on the court to witness Michael Jordan play. But just as he watched Michael Jordan play, many of his peers also watched Michael Jordan play defense. And Rasheed Wallace might be one of the only former players that I've heard come out and say that he was not a great defender, unless you ask Scottie Pippen.
I've seen Michael Jordan play before I came to play with the Bulls. He's a horrible player.
Rasheed brought out some points to try and invalidate Michael Jordan's defense. He talked about how, quote unquote, he used to get his ass bust by players like Allen Iverson, Clyde Drexler, or even the early Joe Dumars. Now, before I dive a little deeper into all the numbers and analytics to prove Rasheed Wallace wrong, I just want to mention that just because you have a couple off nights doesn't mean you're a bad defender. Even the best defenders of all time are going to have moments of being crossed over, getting dunked on, taking plays off, whatever it may be, but that does not invalidate you as being a consistent great defender. So let's go ahead and dive into some of these numbers and expose Rasheed Wallace for completely lying on this podcast. Now let's take a deeper look at Jordan's defensive stats and accolades. Michael Jordan at his defensive peak won the 1987-88 Defensive Player of the Year award, which probably many of us know. He also finished top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting 7 times and top 8 10 times. He is one of only 3 players all time to record 200 plus steals and 100 plus blocks in a season, and the only player to do that twice. Jordan also made first team All-NBA defense 9 times throughout his career. MJ also led the league in steals per game as well as total steals for 3 seasons. These include 1987-88, he averaged 3.2 steals per game and 259 total steals. 1989-90, he averaged 2.8 steals per game and 227 total steals. And in 1992-93, he averaged 2.8 steals per game again and 221 total steals. He also ranks 4th all-time in total steals and 3rd all-time in steals per game. Not only is he extremely high on the steals leaderboards, Michael Jordan is also one of the greatest shot blocking guards in NBA history, if not the greatest, considering he leads all guards in that category as well with 893 career blocks. This number just makes it over Dwayne Wade, who is 2nd on the list with 885, difference being Dwayne Wade played in 1,054 total career games, while Jordan only played in 930 total games. Just to give a little more perspective on Jordan's knack for getting to the ball. Now, I could also mention how Jordan led the league in defensive box plus minus 2 times, or mention his defensive rating of a 102, but these types of advanced defensive metrics can be very misleading and never truly a great indicator of how impactful or non-impactful someone was defensively. Just to add some examples of how misleading these stats can be, Charlie Ward. Who? Charlie Ward is a top 15 player all time in playoff defensive rating over Kevin Garnett. Greg Ostertag and Anderson Varejao are both top 25 in this metric as well, ahead of all-time defenders like Dwight Howard, Kawhi Leonard, Dennis Rodman, Hakeem Olajuwon, Tony Allen, Mutombo, and many more. Now, I also want to point out that it is very important to realize that just looking at steals, blocks, even all-NBA accolades like first team defense or defensive Player of the Year awards, none of these are a sole indicator of how great someone is defensively. I mean, for example, we can look at Allen Iverson, who also led the league in steals 3 times, but nobody is looking at him as an all-time great defender. The reason that we look at Jordan as an all-time great defender is his overall impact on that end of the floor, as well as being able to step up to the challenge of guarding the opposing team's best player, especially in those crucial playoff moments. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of Jordan's best defensive performances. Despite a common misconception misconception that Scottie Pippen was consistently tasked with guarding the opposing team's best player, Jordan's defensive abilities in crucial moments cannot be overlooked. While Pippen's notable switch on Magic in Game 2 of the Finals is often highlighted, it is important to note that in Game 3 of the '91 Finals, Pippen fouled out in that fourth quarter. After Magic had dominated both Jordan and Pippen throughout regulation, Jordan stepped up and shut down Magic in overtime, limiting him to zeros across the board along with 1 turnover. It's also worth emphasizing that Jordan delivered elite defensive performances in every NBA Finals he played, highlighted by a stellar defensive showing in Game 3 against Magic Johnson. Now, one name in particular that Rasheed did mention was Clyde the Glide Drexler, as he said used to bust MJ's ass. Well, I think it is safe to say that in this particular Finals matchup, Jordan had him on lock. And this is the '92 Finals, the year after MJ had Magic struggling. In the 1992 NBA Finals, Jordan was guarding Drexler, widely regarded as one of the top shooting guards of all time. With Jordan defending him, he experienced a large dip in performance efficiency-wise, scoring 25 points per game with a low 40.7 field goal percentage. This was a huge change in comparison to his regular season performance, where he averaged 25 points per game on a great 47% from the field. And not to mention the playoff series before the Finals, Drexler was averaging a crazy 27 points per game, 7 boards, 7.7 assists per game on 49 field goal percentage. Then when he went up against Jordan in the Finals, he went down to 25 points per game, 8 boards, 5 assists on 40.7 field goal percentage. This is not to mention that most of Drexler's points in the Finals came in transition or against defenders other than Michael Jordan, as Jordan effectively shut him down this series as his primary defender. If you'd like to watch all of these defensive highlights, check out the channel Nobody Touches Jordan, where he put in hours of work on these videos finding the specific moments over Jordan's matchups got shut down while he guarded them, as well as the points they did score and how many of them came about while Jordan wasn't actually guarding them. Another instance of Jordan's stellar perimeter defense came against Kevin Johnson in Game 3 of the 1993 NBA Finals. KJ scored 23 points before Jordan switched onto him with about 7 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. This game would go into 3 overtimes. Do you know how many points Kevin Johnson scored after Jordan switched onto him? 2 points. That's it. Now, how about in Game 1 of the 1989 NBA Finals, where Jordan shut down Isaiah Thomas, holding him to only 9 points on an abysmal 3 of 18 shooting from the field. Even after Jordan was past his defensive peak, he still shut down NBA Hall of Famers. For example, Game 7 of the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals, with the season on the line, Jordan was tasked by Phil Jackson to step up and try and control the red-hot Reggie Miller, who had just rallied off for 22 points on 7 of 12 from the three-point line through 3 quarters. Michael Jordan took on this challenge of stopping Reggie in the fourth quarter, and that he did. Jordan held Miller to 0 points in the fourth as his primary defender, and that played a huge part in the Bulls winning that series and eventually winning another championship. What made Jordan so special was his ability to dominate both ends of the basketball court. Rasheed Wallace must have forgotten how many notable Hall of Famers and great players Michael Jordan had to go against and made them struggle constantly throughout this playoff runs. These players include Adrian Dantley, Isaiah Thomas, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Kevin Johnson, Tim Hardaway, Penny Hardaway, Gary Payton, Rod Strickland, Steve Smith, Reggie Miller, John Stockton. I mean, the track record speaks for itself here. And if this isn't impressive enough, we can go even further into MJ's career when he was on his last legs as a wizard at 38 years old before the knee injury that took him out. Let's look at some of his notable one-on-one matchups against the likes of Paul Pierce on November 7th, 2001. And he held him to 14 points on 6 of 16 shooting to go along with 4 turnovers. He would then go on to shut down Latrell Sprewell on December 14th, 2001 by holding him to only 13 points on 2 of 10 shooting. Sprewell was averaging 20 points per game during that time of the season. Old Man Wizards MJ shut down Vince Sanity, holding him to 0 points in the second half on December 16, 2001 after Vince Carter had a 19-point first quarter explosion. I guess MJ wasn't too fond of Sprewell because he would once again shut him down only a week later on December 22nd, 2001, holding him to 3 of 16 shooting and forcing him out of bounds on the game-winning attempt. Michael Jordan's impact defensively, even in the Wizards years, is actually extremely impressive. Looking at the Wizards points per game allowed the year before, they were the second worst in the entire league. The year after Jordan joined, up until his knee injury, the 02 Wizards allowed only 92.2 points per game through 47 games. That ranked for the 6th best mark in the entire league. So to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what Rasheed Wallace was really looking at during his years against Michael Jordan, because it's quite obvious that Michael Jordan was an all-time great defender, if not the greatest perimeter defender to ever play. I mean, Rasheed Wallace with this take is just proof that because you played in the NBA does not mean you know everything about basketball. Players have their own biases and dislikes towards certain players, and they favor different things. I mean, it's quite obvious that Michael Jordan is one of the greatest defenders of all time. I'm not going to go any further into this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.